On Tuesday, President Trump nominated federal appellate court judge Neil Gorsuch to replace Antonin Scalia on the U.S. Supreme Court. Gorsuch is the youngest judge to be nominated in 25 years and is the son of former EPA Director Ronald Reagan and Gorsuch Buford. So, Patty, we thought we were going to talk about this last week, but we thought, yeah, maybe it's not going to happen. We kind of hedged our bets at not being a Colorado judge, just this Colorado story. It ended up being a Colorado story. Now that we know it's going to be a Colorado judge up through this process, what do you think?
Well, it feels like it's the early 80s all over again. So Ann Gorsuch was what could have been the worst EPA head until now. We have Pruitt going in. And the stories, we had a lot of Coloradans. It wasn't just her, it was her husband, Bob Burford. We had a lot of Coloradans in the Reagan cabinet. You can't really tar her son with the brush of what went down with Ann Gorsuch, but it's going to be really, really tricky. By all accounts, and we'll let the lawyers at the table talk about that, you know, he's got a good pedigree. He worked for Whizzer White, our last Colorado Supreme Court justice. He worked for Kennedy. He's made some good judgments. He made a few good judgments just last week in a ruling about the mariachi band, that it was the victim of a false raid by the police. But you still cannot get over the fact that if everything had operated the way things are supposed to, he wouldn't even be nominated now because Obama's last nominee would be in the Supreme Court, and we wouldn't have been sitting here for a year.
David, speaking of what Patty just brought up, Democrats saw that their opportunity to fill a position come and go because Republicans simply said, we're not going to confirm. The shoe's on the other foot now because Republicans are now going to say we're going to sail through these confirmation hearings, and Democrats wanting to put up a fight, but they're not in the majority. Do you think Gorsuch faces a fierce nomination fight?
That depends on whether people like Senator Bennett, for example, want to play the rage machine for their base, or whether they want to be serious and responsible. Whatever happened, whatever happened with Garland happened. And the Senate there followed rules that had been announced by Charles Schumer and Joe Biden previously of saying we are absolutely not going to confirm a Bush nominee in the last a president's nominee in the last year of a presidency. That's just that's nothing new. And Obama's one of his White House counsels said, yeah, of course we would have done the same thing if the shoe were on the other foot. So people can keep on being mad about that, but we're here where we are. Gorsuch is probably the best person that could have been named. He is a stickler for following the law, including when the statute is clear. You do what the statute says and don't try to invent something contrary to it. He's absolutely fearless about ruling against the government. And that, by the way, is a big contrast between him and Merrick Garland, who is also certainly a very eminent, distinguished, and a nice guy, you know, very, very popular for his good temperament. But Garland tended to always find a way to rule in favor of the government, whereas Gorsuch's more literal statutory and constitutional approach leads to different results. So if you're worried about the growing autocracy in this country, which I definitely am, not only with this president, but with a trend that's been growing for many decades, Gorsuch is the best possible person to stand up against it. And the opposition to this is just the usual collection of cliches. He's out of the mainstream, by which they mean he's not a Democrat, because they never find any Republican nominee to be in the mainstream. And, you know, he's for the corporations against the little guy, and all these stupid cliches, which they already had dug out of their chest of stupid things long before any particular person was nominated, and they'd be saying the same thing about anybody else. So, Senator Bennett, if you want to be responsible, give Gorsuch a fair chance and nominate a mainstream Republican, vote for a mainstream Republican nominee.
It did seem that some of the press releases coming out of opposition campaigns immediately after Gorsuch was named as almost it seemed like, you know, insert nomination name here.
Yeah.
And so I get your point. Penn, you're one of our two esteemed lawyers in the panel. What do you think of Neil Gorsuch and his legal record and what that might mean as a potential justice?
I would offer that his legal record means nothing at this point. This has the potential to be a real mess for a couple of reasons. Consider the fact that a Supreme Court justice is a unique position and appointment. It's really a president's legacy to future generations of Americans. presidents are limited to serving 8 years maximum. It's rare that a Supreme Court justice sits for less than 8 years. So it is a way for a president to embody their thought, their doctrines, their opinions beyond their term in office. We also have a unique situation because what happened with Merrick Garland last year wasn't just that he wasn't confirmed. The Senate, controlled by Republicans, refused to even have a hearing or even consider the nomination for over a year. That's unprecedented. And it's true that when Chuck Schumer was running things and Democrats ran the Senate, they may not have confirmed some of President Bush's nominees, but they had hearings on all of them. And so there's really a strong feeling that this is sort of the hijacked nomination. And I think regardless of this nominee's credentials, there's going to be a political battle. Now, how strong it is and how strident Democrats are has yet to be determined. But I think that you'll see a lot of pretty strenuous opposition. And you know, I understand, you know, the point about cliches, but one of the things about cliches is sometimes they're accurate.
Sometimes indeed. Greg, speaking of that potential fight, we haven't seen, I guess, so far, some of the confirmation battles that we thought we'd see with some of the cabinet picks. When some of those cabinet picks were picked, it was almost like it was such a target-rich environment. How many battles we'll be following, not a lot of them have really materialized. Do you think Democrats have potentially saved their powder, as our colleague Eric Son would like to say, to fight this one?
Well, I think they have a better chance because it takes 60 votes right now to confirm the nominee for the Supreme Court. So, yeah, they have a much better chance of blocking that nomination. They almost had no chance of blocking the cabinet appointees. And despite all that, I thought there was high drama there with, you know, Corey testifying against Sessions, one senator against another. That was pretty high drama. But, I think there's the more realistic chance that this nomination could be blocked, but I don't think it will be. And for the same reasons that David pointed out, I think he has a pretty good pedigree. He has a pretty good record. I think the fact that he clerked for Kennedy is something that's going to play in his favor. So we'll see. But yeah, if it takes 60, it's going to be tough. If they do the nuclear option and it's just a simple majority, then he just sails through. A lot of political damage done in the process, but he sails through.